Far from home, no one will ever know our names, but the bard songs will remain. Tomorrow all will be known, and you're not alone, so don't be afraid in the dark and cold, but the bard songs will remain. They all will remain in my thoughts and in my dreams. They're always in my mind. These songs of hobbits, dwarves and men and elves, come close your eyes. Tomorrow will take us away, far from home. No one will ever know our names, but the bard songs will remain. They all will remain.
You know, gave him a child. I would have preferred, of course, to see the pregnancy that preluded the child, but anyway, of course we didn't get to see that. And the movie tanked. It didn't do very well, and they decided to reboot the movie. But I was one of the few people when Superman Returns came out. I said, that's the only interesting thing about that film, is that they actually gave Superman a child. They have never done that in the Superman comic book. Never. And look what happens when they do give him a child. Just recently we had the video game Injustice Gods Amongst Us. Now, for those of you who don't know what Injustice Gods Amongst Us is, it's a video game based on the DC characters. And in this storyline in the game, it's not our Superman, but a Superman in another dimension has gone insane and taken over the entire world. And the reason for that is because in this alternate dimension, the Joker killed Lois Lane while she was pregnant with their child. Now, I've gone back and looked up the online comic book that is actually out that tells about the backstory to this game. And in the storyline, the same day Lois Lane finds out that she's pregnant is the same day that she is killed by the Joker. I'm not going to go into all the details about that, but this is another example of, even in an alternate dimension where they're not telling the story about our Superman, they're telling a story about another Superman in another world. Even there, they won't let him have a child. They kill Lois Lane and the baby off just like that. I mean, the same day she finds out she's pregnant is the same day they kill her off. But it's not our Superman and it's not our Lois Lane, and therefore we can kind of overlook it. But it's still a very heart-wrenching story and a very, very sad storyline. But the point is this: for Superman, they never give him a child. They've come up with all kinds of reasons for that character not to have a child. They've even gone so far as to make up reasons like, Superman cannot have a normal sexual relationship with a woman because he would kill her. And again, that doesn't work. Why? Because it's fantasy. And you can do whatever you want. And for heaven's sake, Superman looks like a human being. He's practically a human being, except for the fact that he comes from another planet and has this remarkable ability to not be harmed and has super strength and all that. So again, bull. But in Superman Returns, they gave him a child. And that, I thought that was the only interesting thing anyone has ever done as far as Superman goes. But of course, even that didn't last very long. And they certainly did not let us see the pregnancy. Heaven forbid should we see anything pregnancy-wise in a superhero film, comic book, movie, whatever. They will not let us see it. But with Superman, I mean, it is just amazing the excuses they will come up for that one character alone never to have a child. They didn't even like the fact that back in the 90s that he and Lois Lane got married. They were married for most of the 90s, and actually right up until recently they were still married, actually. So they were married for almost my word, they were almost married for 20 years. Until they rebooted the DC universe. And now Superman is dating Wonder Woman. But, again, that's another example of, the closest we ever got to Superman having a family or a child is Superman Returns. And, of course, that's all still very disappointing because the movie is terrible and they don't show the pregnancy. Well, I could go on and on about that. But that's just one example. I mean, you can take all the superheroes from Marvel to DC, and I can give you an example where they have at least tried to insinuate that at some point one of these heroes might become a father, only to have that destroyed, or where they have a pregnancy introduced only to have the woman miscarry. For instance, in Captain America, they had, not too long ago, he had a girlfriend. She was pregnant with his child, but of course she had a miscarriage. In Batman, one time, they insinuated that he might have a child with Catwoman, only it turned out to be not his child. And you didn't see anything much... you didn't see anything of the pregnancy in that one either. So, even when they do make a character pregnant, you can't see her. There are many, many examples like that. They either don't show you the pregnancy, or they kill the pregnant character off, or kill the baby off at least. And, I have to go back to Spider-Man for a moment. I found out some years later that when they were doing the Spider-Man clone saga, and they had Mary Jane pregnant, the only reason why they allowed Mary Jane to become pregnant was because at that time they had decided that Peter Parker was going to be the clone, and he was going to be, out of the scene, so it didn't matter that Mary Jane was pregnant. They could allow Spider-Man to have a child because he wasn't going to be Spider-Man anymore. They were going to have, write him out of the storyline, have Ben Reilly take over as Spider-Man, and Peter Parker and Mary Jane could go away and have their family. We would probably only see them every now and then, occasionally. What happened, of course, in that storyline was after they replaced Spider-Man with Ben Reilly, people did not like the new Spider-Man. So eventually they decided to reintroduce Spider-Man back into the comic books. Now, of course, when they decided to reintroduce Peter Parker back as Spider-Man, they had one problem. Mary Jane was pregnant. And to Marvel, anytime when a character is pregnant, that's a problem. That violates the rule. Superheroes cannot have children. Therefore, their solution was kill the baby off. And of course, what happened later was I was still following the comic books, you got to understand, even after this happened, because they insinuated that the child might still be alive, that the Green Goblin might have kidnapped her. And so I kept reading the Spider-Man comic books even after this had happened, because they insinuated very strongly many times that Spider-Man's baby daughter might still be alive somewhere. And I think what happened was, after some time, after insinuating every now and then that the baby might still be alive, they decided, no, we want to get as far away from that storyline and the Clone Saga as much as possible. So they decided we're going to reboot Spider-Man in this way. We are going to bring Aunt May back. Aunt May had died in the Clone Saga. So they decided to bring her back. So they decided to get rid of this idea that the Green Goblin had, kidnapped Spider-Man's daughter. His daughter was not alive, and when they brought Aunt May back, they were going to get rid of Mary Jane, and then they were going to pretend that the storyline, the Clone Saga, as well as the pregnancy of Mary Jane, had never happened. And it's very strange. After some years, that's when I stopped reading Spider-Man, of course, when I realized they were never going to bring the child back and get rid of Mary Jane. But some years after that, they did start talking again about the Clone Saga. For a while they wouldn't talk about it. They had pretty much removed it from the continuity of Spider-Man. And then later they decided to acknowledge it again. But the one thing they didn't want to acknowledge, and this is very telling about everything that Marvel does and comic books and superheroes, what they do to them, they would still never acknowledge that Mary Jane had been pregnant at one point. It was never brought up again. till this day, as far as Marvel is concerned, that storyline, the pregnancy of Mary Jane, never happened. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, it was a terrible storyline, and they wrote themselves in a kind of a corner. But the point is, they didn't have to kill the baby off. They didn't have to do any of that. And the way it was handled was just awful. And like I said, Spider-Man has been going downhill ever since. And it's one of the reasons why I don't follow Spider-Man anymore. I haven't followed him since that day they decided to get rid of Mary Jane and never bring back the baby. So what I'm getting at in all of this is that when it comes to superheroes, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, etc., they will never allow them to have children. Even though there are exceptions like the Fantastic Four, which prove that you can have pregnancy and in a storyline and have it work. You can let the superheroes have wives, have children, and it will not destroy the comic. It will not ruin the storylines. If anything, it just makes them more interesting. There's more at stake. But they will never do that. That is why you will never see a pregnancy in a Superman movie or a Batman movie or a Spider-Man movie, etc. And you will certainly never see them in comic books, because if you see them in comic books, what will happen is they will either have the pregnant character have a miscarriage, or they'll just tease you, about the character maybe having a child and it won't even happen, or something to that degree. Ultimately it's a real shame that we can't have pregnancy storylines in superhero comic books, movies, or TV plots, because we've seen where it can work. It's worked with the Fantastic Four. I mean, it's worked in other places. It's bizarre that they say superheroes cannot have children, they cannot have wives, because that would ruin the character. There are exceptions that they seem to be oblivious to, where they have purposely had pregnant characters, where they have had children, where they have had wives, and it has not destroyed the characters or the storyline at all. So it's just mind-boggling why they would do that to the characters. Maybe they believe ultimately they have to be these sort of lone wolves that have to take the responsibility of being a hero all on their own, and they cannot have a supporting spouse or girlfriend because they essentially have to be the lone wolf. I don't know. You come up with your own theory, but that's just one I have about it. In closing, I'll just say this. It's a real shame that we can't have a pregnancy storyline in a superhero movie or comic book or in any kind of superhero plot, because I think it would bring a lot to the storyline, a lot to the character, and heaven knows we would love to see something like that. But ultimately, I'm afraid we'll never see a pregnancy storyline in any kind of superhero plot, whatever it may be it movies, television, or comic books. And that's unfortunate, because pregnancy can make everything better. And I know that for a fact. And I know you guys know that as well. Well, anyway, that's my thought on the subject of pregnancy and superheroes. We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye for now.